Welcome, welcome. We've got another episode of the WordCamp LAX live show. I'm Joey Dowd, your live show host and wrangler. Thank you to Sean and Rob for your presentations. You want to talk to them some more? Head on over to the Zoom hallway or Slack. And now it is time for some WordPress tricks of the trade. So we've got a couple more in from Sumner, one of our organizers. My WordPress tip, always start with accessibility in mind and you will save a lot of work and redo. You can also make your work easier when you start with WordPress accessibility ready themes. So continue with that accessibility trend and theme that we talked about with EasyWP. Always a good idea to keep in mind, and just good practice in general with best practices for accessibility. And then from James, another one of our wranglers. A trick of the trade for WordCamp LAX: if you have a large site, over 100 posts, you should be regularly clearing WP transients for better database speed. I partly understand that, but I believe that is cleaning up your database. You should check out the hashtag WCLAX because this system doesn't fully pull in all of the posts. Some of these do have links with them that have a little bit more context to the tweet. So I think James is also referring to a plugin or an article that could help with cleaning up. But yeah, definitely if you get your site gets bigger, you want to clean up your database, and there's some plugins out there that can help you do that. Next up, we've got sponsors. So we've got another sponsor joining us right now. We have David Vogelpohl from WP Engine. Hello, David.
Hey, Joey. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Tell us a bit about WP Engine.
Yeah, for those unfamiliar, WP Engine is a WordPress technology company. We own a few brands in the WordPress space, including the WP Engine hosting platform, Flywheel, which is also a managed WordPress hosting platform. We have products like Local and Genesis, and a bunch of other ways we deliver value to people in the WordPress ecosystem.
Awesome. Before we jump into some of the details, you want to talk about what you've got going on mostly tomorrow with your during WordCamp?
Yes. At noon Pacific time, we're going to be having a Kahoot session. So that's trivia. So hopefully you brought your trivia hat. So if you could join us at the virtual booth tomorrow, we'll have tons of fun and prizes with nice little trivia through Kahoot. So that'll be a good time. So join us at noon tomorrow in the
that's
WP
in your
Engine
Zoom room, right?
Yeah. Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Cool, and you can find that link in the sponsor hub at la.wordcamp.org. So one of your products is the Genesis theme. So do you want to talk a bit more about Genesis in particular and some of the Gutenberg updates you have?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those familiar with Genesis, they may be familiar with the Genesis framework, which is a theme framework. And one of the things we've been working on in preparation for full site editing coming into WordPress core are block-centric products, particularly products and plugins like Genesis Blocks, which is on WordPress.org, as well as Genesis Custom Blocks. As we think about the way WordPress is evolving, for those familiar, what we'll see in version 5.6 is a public beta of what's called full site editing. This is where the block editor isn't only used for editing content within posts, the body of posts and pages, but also the header, the sidebar, and the footer. In other words, the full site. This is what we call phase 2 of the block editor in WordPress core. So as we look at that and we look at the dynamics that are happening there, and particularly around themes, the way themes are structured is drastically changing. The structure of the theme files, what PHP functions are available, are going to be reduced within the new context of full site editing themes. And what we're going to see is a shift in the dynamic of functionality and design into the block editor. And that's going to create some new paradigms in how you approach a custom build. For us with Genesis Blocks, the way we're looking at it, for those unfamiliar, Genesis Blocks includes a suite of pre-optimized, pre-designed, pre-speed optimized and SEO optimized blocks and what we call sections, which are part of a page, layouts, which essentially are an entire page of pre-designed and optimized blocks. And then we'll be releasing a new feature soon called collections, which would essentially be an entire site of block-based demo content. And it loads in seconds, like you click, or not even seconds, like half a second. You click on it and then boom, the content's right there ready to edit. And so these are some of the ways that we're preparing the Genesis community for full site editing. And then of course, extending that into the navigation header, sidebar, and footer as full site editing comes into WordPress core. And then I think the other side I'm excited about is really what I'm seeing, not just what we do, but what other companies in the WordPress ecosystem are doing by creating custom blocks. So, you know, as you may recall from WordCamp US in Philly a few years back, Matt Mullenweg said, learn JavaScript deeply. And of course, part of that reason is the use of React with the Gutenberg block editor. Now, you can, of course, and in a lot of cases should build custom blocks with React, but not everyone has learned how to do that yet. They haven't learned JavaScript deeply. They've been focusing on their business, focusing on their clients, and not necessarily acquiring those additional skills outside of the kind of bread and butter WordPress developer skills, HTML, CSS, and PHP. And so there are ways, though, to build custom block experiences without knowing PHP. One of my favorites is using block patterns. So you can leverage blocks within essentially an arrangement, leveraging block patterns within WordPress core. And this you can leverage, say, for example, the core blocks, like the header block or the paragraph block or an image block, and arrange them in a block pattern that for the editor feels very much like this is a block that's custom built for this purpose. The other choices you have are to use plugins. ACF has a good one for leveraging HTML, CSS, PHP, and WP admin to build custom blocks. And then we have one called Genesis Custom Blocks, which takes a similar approach. So on the back end in WP admin, you create the blocks fields via, add block, add field. You then select the type of block, or type of field, is in an image, a text field, color field, and then where you want the field to appear, within the block or within the inspector panel. Once you create the fields, then you would create CSS and PHP files within the theme, and you can actually also do this within a plugin, and that's important for full site editing because we'll be spending more of our time in PHP in those plugins than in themes. But through your bread and butter WordPress developer skills, you can create your own custom block, including your own custom PHP to make the block do things like integrate with other things. But the collection of these things, Joey, I'm super excited about because this is a big moment in WordPress history as the default editing experience, goes through these next set of phases. And if we look historically at WordPress, at these moments when technology is introduced, we see an explosion of innovation, what agencies do with WordPress, what entrepreneurs do in terms of starting new businesses. We saw this with custom post types back in 2010. WooCommerce came out shortly after that. WP Engine came out shortly after that, and a whole host of other companies. So I'm really excited to be in this moment. But that's what we've been thinking of and kind of building towards with Genesis Blocks and Genesis Custom Blocks.
That is a lot of exciting updates. That is a lot of
Yes.
a lot of stuff coming.
So many things happening, Joey.
So I mean, on a high level, I mean, this is basically taking the sort of more visual approach with Gutenberg and a lot of like being able to build blocks and drag and well, not to oversimplify it, but drag and drop and a little bit more of a visual design or like a WYSIWYG kind of editor, and expanding that where you can customize your entire website, not just your blog posts.
Yeah, I mean, the block editor being extended into the navigation, so you can build out your navigation with more intuitive tools, the sidebar and the footer, of course. And I think the thing people get a little confused about is that you can't do custom things with the block editor. My point is that you absolutely can. You can build those custom blocks. You can make them look and behave however you like. And the way I view it is not abstracting out the development work or abstracting out what the value of those teams are doing, but rather amplifying it. When WP Engine adopted workflows that included these type of approaches, we were able to get ideas to market faster. Our development, our web development team had less what I call soul-crushing landing page tickets. Like they were able to build cool stuff and cool blocks that integrated with things and build more valuable things that were helpful to more people and more content creators. So that's the part I'm most excited about. I think the ease of use is fantastic for the novice, but the scale of innovation that it delivers to dev teams is, I think, what I'm most excited about.
What would be your, to do a custom block, what would sort of need to be your expertise level in development languages or programming languages? I don't have really much of a development background, so like what's sort of the, if I kind of wanted to dabble with customizing and custom blocks, what would be the next step I should do?
Yeah, ideally, you're at least going to need to know some HTML and CSS in order to do those custom styles. Now, blocks themselves, of course, will have controls, design controls, which are located in the inspector panel on the right. Now, with the design controls, you can modify things depending on the block, like the background color, font color, certainly the images contained within the block, and other design elements. You're not really moving it around like you might with PowerPoint or Google Slides or something like that. Most of the blocks do follow a set pattern, but they will often have options within the blocks that allow you to modify the design, like how many rows are in a table and so on and so forth. But HTML, CSS, and a little PHP will get you there with Genesis custom blocks and ACF and also block patterns.
Cool. Real quick, because we've got a couple seconds left, your trick of the trade, your 10-second version of your trick of the trade.
Yes. Make your own URL shortener with WordPress, install the Pretty Links plugin, register a short URL, and never compete with anyone for shortened URL slugs again.
I love that one.
That's my tip of the trade.
Well, thank you so much, David. Really appreciate you coming on and dropping a bunch of updates. That's awesome.
Thanks, Joey.
Coming up next, got real quick. Next up on track 1, which is now community themed, we have inclusive content strategy. And on track 2 in design theme, we have who cares about UX, case study, UX before and after. That wraps up this episode of the WordCamp LAX live show. Enjoy the talks, and we'll see you back here for our final live show of the day at 4 p.m.